Hey guys, Gwinnett here. This is the second video where I am talking about the power of White Weenie and Standard Pauper right now. First game I illustrated how it is able to keep up and sometimes even be just a little bit bigger than some of the other aggro decks. In this particular matchup I'm going to be playing against the Dimir Mill strategy, which has been really popular. This is actually the middle game of a three-game match that I played also in the latest edition of Monday Pauper Deck Challenge. In this particular case, game one, I got stuck on one land, and that was pretty much that until much later in the game. Never really had the ability to recover. And then in the same match in game three, my opponent had a very similar thing happen. So really the only interesting game from that particular match was this one, so I wanted to show it to you and show how White Weenie is able to really put the pressure on a really highly controlling build like Dimir Mill. One of the things you'll notice since this is game two is that I put a few extra cards into my library. In fact, 7 extra cards to be exact, just to give me a little bit of extra cards in case it comes down to who can mill the other person out first. Doesn't typically come up against mill, but it's one of those really corner edges that at least in this case I thought was worth pursuing. So let's take a look at my opener here. Only got one land, but in this case, because I have so many 1-drops, I think that is probably worth keeping. And that is in fact what I do. My opponent also kept his 7. So here, going to go ahead and lead with a Nyxborn Shieldmate, just trying to get damage in as quickly as I can here. My opponent has a Swamp, but no removal. I don't know if there's any, I don't think anything right now is being played that can remove something for only 1 black mana. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So fortunately draw into the 2nd mana, and this again is just a really good opener for against this particular matchup, simply because he's got to spend some removal spells in order to keep up with me, and here I've already got 3 creatures on the board on turn 2, so that's pretty good for me. Obviously swing in here for 1, pass the turn back. My opponent's turn just plays a 2nd land and passes. Probably has counterspell here, but in this case, in order to play around the counterspell, or I'm sorry, it's probably thinking Essence Scatter. Try out the Ethereal Armor. Obviously, he has targeted removal. That's not going to be a good play. But in this case, he actually has Negate, which he brought in another sideboard, which is decent against this particular deck, although I personally think he got pretty lucky that he was able to get that right there. But still swinging in for 3 here, which is very powerful for me. Drop a Sungrace Pegasus and pass the turn back. On his turn, my opponent goes ahead and plays out a Pilfered Plans and mills a Courtshade Denizen and a Plains. Draw into a Heliod's Pilgrim, which is great for me. Not only will that get me another creature, but will also allow me to retrieve an Ethereal Armor as well. And here we'll swing in for 4, with one of those being a life gain, dropping my opponent down to 12. My opponent on 4 mana just passes. Again, not that unusual for Dimir Mill. Cast a Raise the Alarm, and my opponent has a Devour Flesh here, so I will go ahead and sacrifice the Heliod's Pilgrim. And has a 2nd Devour Flesh. In this case, I will go ahead and sacrifice Cathar, hoping that my opponent is not able to find a -1/-1 to all my creatures. But I do end up finding the Ethereal Armor and swinging in here for 6. +4, that being life gain, putting me at a very healthy life, although against Dimir Mill life doesn't really matter. But more importantly, dropping my opponent to 6, plays Pilfered Plans, and that is when he goes ahead and concedes. So one of the reasons to be playing this particular build, again, Dimir Mill is one of the most prolific decks in the metagame right now, and you've got to have a plan against it. In fact, I said on Twitter earlier this week that pretty much White Weenie and Dimir Mill are kind of the 2 cornerstone decks right now in the metagame, and you've got to have a plan to be able to beat both. So anyway, I think this is a really great illustration of how White Weenie is able just to put a lot of pressure on very quickly and really push through and accelerate through any of them, or a real highly controlling strategy. So hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I'll see you next time.
In closing, let me remind you, you can keep up with all my writings and articles by following me on Twitter at the username Gwyned42. That's GWYNED and the number 42. I also regularly publish articles over at puremtgo.com. Search for me by the username Gwyned on that site, or find the link in the description of this video. I also maintain a blog now at writeradept.blogspot.com, and you can also find that in the description. Finally, if you enjoyed these videos, please remember to subscribe to my channel and post any feedback or comments. Thanks for watching.